I've had this empty patch of land in my city for a while now. Despite plans to concrete over the grass and to construct a couple high rises, I've decided that the location would probably suit a park of some kind quite well. Given that there's already water, what better to build than a decorative lake? I decided to start this project by tidying up around the edges, most notably the landscar-esque borders of the road. While terraforming by hand like this is often one of the more tedious tasks when working on a project, it's often an important step to make before building anything else, and it helps you to get a better idea of what sort of terrain you're working with. As with most of my builds, I'll be using World Edit from time to time to clear certain things. While I generally recommend avoiding World Edit for organics, there are definitely still times when it can come in handy. After extending the row of trees, I'm content to begin working on the actual project itself. I like to start these sorts of projects by building and outlining the spaces in which I want the player to exist. I like to call these areas accessible regions, and everywhere else I like to call decorative regions. The most logical thing to do here is outline the paths running through the park and place down a small seating area. Once this is done, I'm able to mark out the borders between the accessible regions and the decorative regions. I want this park to have a somewhat temperate feeling to its climate, especially given its proximity to some mountainous terrain. I decided that it would be a good idea to get the outside of the lake finished first so I can get an idea of what the colours will look like when it's completed. Here, using a variation of sand, gravel and mud seemed to be the best choice for the theme that I was going for. Once again, I'm marking clearly the accessible areas versus the decorative areas. When landscaping dense vegetation, I usually start by first adding some variation to the plant bed, which I'm doing here using Podzol. From here, I'm able to gradually build up the layers of vegetation on top. A good tip when doing this sort of thing is to group plants of the same species together. This creates an overall more realistic look and in my opinion gives the landscape much more of a handcrafted feel. Next, I converted the grass in the accessible areas into a sort of lawn pattern using dark green concrete powder and grass blocks in lines, which I later covered over in a few ferns. I decided that it made sense to run a second path going to the north of the park, given that it's likely people will be looking to walk through that way. Once more, I'm defining accessible areas versus decorative areas using leaves. I spent some time here seeing if I could use coral above ground, but this will require some changes to be made server side, something which will be done soon. One tip which I'll always give for these sorts of builds is to use bone meal. A lot of people avoid using it completely in order to maintain neat, orderly rows of flowers. While this can work amazingly in some situations, when working with more of a wild style of landscaping, bone meal works incredibly well for dense vegetation. Here, I decided to add a sort of weeping willow inspired tree with a rope swing, which I accidentally paused the recording for while I built it. At this point, the lake itself was looking rather bland. I went over the water with lily pads and small drip leaves to add some surface level decoration, before finally covering the bottom of the lake with seagrass. The bank seemed like it would fit a small waterfall, so I added that in too. In future, I'd like to add some sort of river to the side of the hill to make this a bit more realistic. I find lighting to be one of the most important features of any build, especially when people will be viewing it at night time. Overall, this made a very enjoyable project to work on, something which I find to be extremely relaxing when working with vegetation in Minecraft, and projects like these are something which I often seek out. If you'd like to check out the park in person, feel free to visit my town in-game on minecartrapidtransit.net, which is the server I built this on. Heading to Nibel, you should be able to find the park just east of the cathedral. I hope you found this video interesting, and thank you for watching.